The sky above Draxon 5 was always gray. Smoke and dust hung over the giant labor camp like a curse. The air smelled like burnt metal. The ground was dry and cracked. Long lines of tired prisoners, humans, insectoids, reptilians, moved like machines, dragging tools across the broken land. They were digging, building, and breaking stone for a war that had already ended. This wasn't a prison, it was slavery. The guards were called the Cruven. Tall, cold-skinned aliens with red eyes and sharp armor. They carried electric batons and stun guns. They didn't speak often, they didn't need to. Their cruelty spoke for them. Most prisoners obeyed. Quietly. Fearfully. Until he arrived. A human. His name was Logan Miles. He was dropped into the labor camp with heavy cuffs on his wrists and ankles. 2 Cruven guards dragged him forward, tossing him into the dirt near the rest of the prisoners. He didn't scream. He didn't ask questions. He simply stood up, wiped the dust off his face, and looked around. The alien prisoners watched him carefully. New arrivals usually broke within hours. One guard shouted, "Kneel!" The crowd of prisoners lowered their heads, trembling. But Logan didn't move. The guard shouted again, "Kneel, human!" Logan stared at him, his face calm, but firm. No. The camp fell silent. A second later, the guard slammed his baton into Logan's back. Sparks flew. Logan fell to one knee but pushed himself back up again. "I said no," he repeated, his voice steady. The second guard joined in. Together, they beat him for over a minute. Blood dripped from his mouth. His shirt tore open. But he never begged. Never cried, never broke. Finally, the lead guard growled, "Put him in the box." The box was a small metal cell buried in the ground. No food, no light, no space to stand. As they dragged him away, one old reptilian prisoner whispered, "Foolish human. They'll break him like the rest." But the youngest prisoner, a small, thin alien with blue skin, asked, "Why didn't he scream?" The elder didn't answer because deep inside, even he wanted to know. Logan spent 3 days in the box. When they pulled him out, his lips were cracked. His body was weak. His back was bleeding, but when the Cruven told him to kneel again, he looked them in the eyes and said, "I don't kneel to cowards." He was beaten again. But something changed. The prisoners saw it, a quiet strength. The next morning, Logan joined the work crew in the West Yard. His chains were heavier now and one arm hung loosely from the beatings. But when the small blue-skinned alien from earlier tripped and dropped his tool, Logan picked it up and handed it back. "No shame in falling," he said. The young alien stared. "Why are you being kind?" Logan shrugged. "Because someone has to." The other prisoners watched. No one had ever done that before. In this camp, kindness was dangerous. It made you a target, but Logan didn't care. Later that day, an accident happened in the tool zone. A falling beam crushed a worker's leg. The guards laughed and walked away. Logan didn't. He crawled under the beam, tied a broken belt around the alien's leg, and helped carry him to shelter. That night, the guards whipped him for interfering. Took every lash in silence. Back in the sleeping area, as prisoners lay on cold floors with no blankets, Logan shared half his food with the injured one. "Why?" the alien asked again. Logan answered, "Because if we stop caring, we're not prisoners. We're dead already." And from that night on, the prisoners began to watch him differently, not with pity, but with hope. The Cruven guards thought pain would be enough. They believed hunger, beatings, and fear would keep the prisoners silent. And for many years it had, until the human came. Logan Miles no longer needed to speak. His actions were louder than any words. Every morning, he helped the slowest workers tie their chains. He taught a one-eyed reptilian how to shift his weight to carry stone better. He gave his water ration to a winged insectoid, whose wings had been torn off by the guards. He didn't ask for anything back, but everyone was watching. One afternoon, Logan noticed a young alien named Tarek, small, pale, and always alone, struggling to pull a cart loaded with tools. Logan walked beside him and gently said, "Let me push with you." Tarek stared. "Why? We're not even from the same planet." Logan looked forward. "In pain, we all speak the same language." Together, they moved the cart. Tarek didn't say a word, but something inside him shifted. By the end of that week, Logan had created something the guards didn't understand. Unity. It started small. When one prisoner fell, others picked them up. When food rations dropped, they shared evenly. When guards yelled, more eyes looked up, not down. No one disobeyed loudly, but something had changed. The prisoners moved together now. Their silence felt strong. One night, Logan returned to the barracks with a split lip. A guard had hit him for giving his extra bread to a weak prisoner. Tarek sat beside him in the dark. "Why do you keep doing this?" he asked. Logan smiled, even with blood on his teeth. "Because every time they hit me, you all lift your heads a little higher." Tarek whispered, "You're crazy." Logan shrugged. "Maybe, but I'd rather be crazy than broken." That night, Logan gathered 5 prisoners in a circle: a clawed alien, a feathered female, Tarek, and 2 silent stone-skinned beings. He drew marks on the dirt floor. Simple signals. 3 fingers meant danger nearby. A fist meant help needed. 2 taps meant food shared. He was teaching them something that couldn't be seen or heard: resistance without sound. They listened carefully. Soon, prisoners in different zones began using hand signs. One blinked, another nodded. A silent message passed from one worker to the next. The guards thought they were just tired gestures, but Logan had started something powerful. Days later, a tool shipment arrived from the east gate, an old crate of drill heads and rusted cables. While the guards rested, Logan led a crew to unload them. But quietly, he hid one small metal piece under his sleeve. Later that night, he added it to his collection. Scraps of wire, a snapped battery cell, a broken scanner lens. Tarek watched him. "What are you building?" Logan whispered. "Freedom." But not everyone was loyal. One prisoner, a tall 4-armed alien named Grook, watched Logan closely. He had always been loyal to the guards. He believed order was safer than rebellion. And when he saw Logan's hidden parts, he went straight to the command tower. Inside the guard station, Warden Krell, a cruel Kruven officer with a silver mask, listened quietly. He tapped his claws on the desk as Grook spoke. "So the human is building something?" "Yes," Grook said. "And the others are following him." Krell stood slowly. "Then it's time." "Time for what?" Grook asked. Krell's eyes narrowed. "To make an example of him. A very public one." By the 3rd week, something strange had started to happen in the Draxon 5 labor camp. The prisoners began to stand straighter. They began to look at the guards, not just at the ground. And every time a Kruven baton fell, more eyes turned toward the one being hit, not with pity, but with anger. It wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. But it was spreading. Hope. Logan Miles walked with a limp now, his ankle swollen, ribs still healing. But every morning he rose early, lined up for work, and gave a nod to the other prisoners. It was a small thing, but it meant, "We are still here," and they nodded back. Tarek, the young alien who once feared speaking, now moved beside Logan as a quiet partner. He passed hand signals. He helped carry parts for the secret machine Logan was slowly building, using hidden scraps, wires, and metal fragments. Logan called it the key. It wasn't a weapon, it was a signal booster, meant to call for help across systems using old Earth military codes. If it worked, Earth might hear them. If it failed, they would hang for treason. But Logan didn't stop. In the work zone, guards shouted at a one-armed lizard worker named Rendak. He had fallen from exhaustion. Before, everyone would have looked away, but now, something happened. An insectoid prisoner stepped forward. He lifted Rendak gently and placed him back in line. The guards raised their weapons, ready to punish both, but 4 more prisoners stepped forward and stood between the guard and the fallen worker. No words, just silent defiance. The guards stared, then backed off, confused. Inside the tower, Warden Krell watched the cameras with a cold glare. "This virus," he growled. "This unity, it must be cut out." One of the officers asked, "Shall we start isolating the leaders?" Krell shook his head. "No, that makes martyrs." He stood slowly, armor clicking. "Tomorrow," he said, "we show them what happens to false hope." That night, Tarek sat beside Logan under the weak light of the moons. Logan was soldering a copper coil into a makeshift antenna. Tarek whispered, "They're going to hurt you again." Logan didn't stop working. "I know." "Then why keep going?" Logan looked at him. "Because every time I stand back up, someone else starts to believe they can too." Tarek swallowed hard. "I'm scared." Logan smiled softly. "Good. That means you're still alive." At midnight, a prisoner named Jezra approached quietly. She was tall, covered in feathers, and had always kept her distance. But tonight, she knelt beside Logan and handed him a polished metal lens. "I took this from the machine bay," she whispered. "For your key." Logan looked at her, surprised. "Why now?" he asked. She replied, "Because I saw you give your food to a stranger, and then smile." She stood. "That's not something a broken man does." By morning, over 40 prisoners had passed parts to Logan, hidden inside bread, under rocks, or tied in ropes. The key was nearly complete, but none of them knew. The guards were already preparing something deadly. Next morning, the sirens blared louder than usual. All prisoners were ordered to the central yard. Guards stood in full armor. Guns charged. Warden Krell walked to the front holding something in his clawed hand, a short, jagged whip. He spoke into the translator. "One among you has poisoned the minds of others. This cannot continue. Step forward, human." Logan didn't move, but Tarek did. He tried to speak. "He hasn't poisoned us. He saved." A guard slapped him to the ground. Logan caught him before he hit the dirt. He stood tall, eyes meeting Krell's. "I'm the one you're looking for." The crowd went silent. Logan stepped forward, not because he was brave, but because he refused to let fear rule again. The sky above Draxon 5 was dark, even though it was morning. Thick clouds rolled in like they knew what was about to happen. In the center of the labor camp, every prisoner was gathered. Hundreds of eyes watched in silence. Chains clinked. Guards stood in lines, weapons ready. At the front stood Warden Krell, tall and cold in silver armor, holding a jagged black whip. Next to him stood Logan Miles, his shirt torn, hands tied, back bare. He did not shake. He did not beg. He simply looked ahead, at nothing and everything. Krell's voice echoed across the yard. "This is what happens when weakness spreads. This is what happens when hope becomes poison." He looked at Logan. "And this is how we remind you. Who owns your flesh?" The whip cracked through the air. First strike, Logan's body flinched, but he said nothing. Second strike, blood ran down his spine. The crowd didn't move. The third strike came, then the fourth, fifth. Still, Logan said nothing. Krell narrowed his eyes. "Speak." Logan stayed silent. The sixth strike hit deeper. Tarek tried to move, but a guard shoved him down. The seventh strike came. By the eighth, even some guards looked uneasy. And by the ninth, something strange happened. A small sound. Not from Logan, but from the crowd. A clap. One. Then two. A childlike alien from Sector B clapped once more. A guard raised his baton, but more claps followed. Slow. Steady 20 on 50 hands, claws, tentacles, fins, every species, every voice, clapping in rhythm. Krell shouted, "Silence." The noise grew. A wave of sound filled the yard, not of pain but of unity. Even as the 10th whip strike fell, Logan's head lifted. His eyes opened. He looked at the prisoners, not in pain, but in pride. He smiled through blood. Krell's arm froze, mid-air. He saw it now. This wasn't a punishment. It was a message, and Logan wasn't the only one delivering it anymore. The whole camp was. One of the guards whispered, "They're not afraid." Krell growled, "Then we remind them." He raised his claw to order fire, but Logan spoke. His voice cracked, low, but clear. "Go ahead. Kill me. You'll only make me louder." Krell paused. Logan looked straight at him. "You've built your walls with fear. I just broke one with silence." That moment held the whole yard in stillness. Not even the wind moved. And then Krell dropped the whip, walked away, and left the human standing. Logan fell to his knees, but before he hit the dirt, 6 prisoners caught him. Tarek, Jezra, Rendak, even the old one-eyed reptilian. They lifted him gently, not like a fallen man, like a leader. Later that night, in the dark corner of the sleeping barracks, prisoners gathered around him. He lay on a mat, body torn, barely breathing, but his lips moved. "Are they still afraid?" he asked weakly. Tarek smiled, tears in his eyes. "No," he said. "They're not." Logan closed his eyes and whispered, "Then we've already won." The night after the whipping, Draxon 5 was too quiet. Even the wind stayed low, as if afraid to disturb what had begun. Logan Miles lay on a mat of cloth scraps, his back bandaged with torn shirts soaked in clean water. A rare gift from the kitchen worker who had watched the public punishment in tears. He should have been unconscious. Instead, he whispered, "Tonight, it begins." In the darkness of the storage pit, Tarek moved quietly, carrying a bag full of scrap wire and broken batteries. Beside him, Jezra, the feathered alien, watched the guards pattern through a vent pipe. Their hands moved quickly, just like Logan had taught them. No loud speeches, no banners, just work. The key, Logan's machine, was nearly ready. Back in the barracks, Logan slowly sat up, his face pale, breathing hard. Dozens of eyes watched him. Not as a hero, as a plan. He raised a shaking hand and pointed at Tarek. "You finish it," he said. Tarek stepped forward. "It's not just your fight anymore." Logan smiled. "It never was." As the hours passed, small things happened across the camp. A stolen battery was slipped into a laundry cart. A rusted metal rod was reshaped into an antenna. A silent nod from a lizard prisoner allowed access to a forgotten vent. And by midnight, in the shadow of the trash compactor, the key was complete. A small machine, built from junk, but powered by belief. Tarek stood over it, hands shaking. "What, if it doesn't work?" he asked. Jezra replied, "Then we keep trying." He powered it on. The machine blinked once, then again, then stayed steady, green. Logan had programmed it to send a pulse code signal using old Earth military frequency. Message made of numbers translated only one way. Human alive, labor camp need rescue. Coordinates locked. It would only send once, then burn out. But once was enough. Meanwhile, the guards grew uneasy. Warden Krell watched his officers closely. "Why are they so quiet?" he asked. "They should be broken." But what he saw instead were glances, the shared looks, silent understanding. Not fear. Something worse. Faith. That same night, one guard approached the prisoners with a smirk. "You think this changes anything?" he sneered at Tarek. "We still own your bodies." Tarek looked up, voice calm. "But not our hearts." The guard raised his baton, just as the lights went out. Darkness. Complete. And then, a flare of fire in the sky. The prisoners rushed to the open yard. Above them, the sky burned gold and red, not from attack, from a Terran distress beacon. It had been triggered. Inside the command tower, Krell slammed his fists on the console. Find the signal. Shut it down. But it was too late. The beacon had done its job. Someone somewhere had heard them. And they were coming. Down below, Logan stood, weak but upright. The camp saw him silhouetted by the light in the sky. He didn't speak. He didn't need to, because, for the first time in years, the camp didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a storm waiting to rise. That night, fires burned in barrels for warmth, not destruction. And around them, aliens of every species sat together, shared stolen bread, whispered stories of Earth, and looked at Logan like something more than human. He was proof that even in the darkest place, fire could still be born. 3 days after the signal was sent, the prisoners of Draxon 5 waited. Every morning they lined up like before. Every night they worked like before. But everything felt different now, because they knew something the Crewven didn't. Help was coming. In the watchtower, Warden Krell paced like a beast trapped in a cage. His claws tapped the metal walls. His officers watched the prisoners below, confused. "They're working, but not afraid," one said. Krell snarled. "Because they believe their kind is coming." "And if they are?" another officer asked. Krell turned slowly. "Then we turn this place into a graveyard before they land." Below, Logan Miles stood, at the fence line, staring into the sky. He was still healing. His ribs hurt with every breath. But he stood tall. Next to him stood Tarek, eyes fixed upward. "I've never seen a human ship," he whispered. Logan smiled softly. "You'll know, when it comes. Earthships don't sneak, they roar." That night the sky changed. A single dot appeared, faint but fast. Then it split into 3. Then 10. Glowing trails cut through the clouds like fire through paper. Someone screamed, "Ships!" The camp went wild. Prisoners cried. Some fell to their knees. The guards shouted, "Silence!" "Back to your cells." But no one moved. Then the loudspeaker crackled. "This is Commander Reed of the Terran Peace Corps. You have violated Galactic Code 471, forced labor of non-human prisoners. Stand down and surrender, or be removed by force." Krell's voice screamed from the tower. "You are trespassing on Crewven territory. Leave now or we open fire." Seconds later, the ground shook. A drop pod landed just outside the outer wall. It exploded open with a hiss. Terran soldiers in black and gold armor poured out, each carrying rifles powered with stun and kinetic rounds. The Crewven opened fire, but they didn't expect the humans to advance through it. Explosions rocked the towers. Sirens screamed, lights failed, and in the chaos, Logan turned to the prisoners. "Now!" he shouted. "Move!" The plan had already been spread. Hidden tunnels, broken fences, escape routes Logan had mapped in secret with help from the others. Prisoners began unlocking cages. Guards were knocked out with stolen tools, no one killed. That was Logan's rule. "We don't become them." Tarek led a group of younglings toward the southern gate. Jezra climbed the walls and disabled a sentry gun with scrap wiring. Rendak, the one-armed lizard, used a broken pipe to shield 2 elders from falling debris. Everyone played a part, because now they belonged to something. Inside the main yard, Logan faced Krell one last time. The warden, bruised and furious, raised a shock blade. "You think you've won, human?" Logan didn't raise a weapon. He stepped forward slowly, hands down. "I didn't come here to win," he said. "I came here to remind you what you tried to bury." Krell screamed and charged, but before he reached Logan, a stun beam hit him from above. Commander Reed stood at the gate, rifle still hot. She nodded to Logan. "Nice signal." Logan gave a tired smile. "Nice entrance." Hours later, the camp was cleared. Wounded were treated. Food was passed out. Blankets shared. But more important than all of it were the faces, smiling, free, alive. Commander Reed walked beside Logan as he limped toward a medical tent. "You know," she said, "we didn't even know this camp existed until that signal." Logan looked out across the sunrise. Some prisons, Are built so no one will notice, he said. That's why I had to scream without sound. She looked at him, impressed. You turned a labor camp into an army. He shook his head. No, I just reminded them they were already won. 2 weeks had passed since the skies above Draxon 5 burned with Terran ships. The labor camp was no more. The fences had been torn down, the towers had been dismantled, and in the middle of the wide yard, once a place of punishment and silence, a garden was growing, a real one, planted by hands that once carried chains. Logan Miles stood under the first growing tree, leaning slightly on a cane. His ribs were still healing, but he was upright, standing without fear, without orders, without permission, just like always. Around him, the former prisoners were busy with new work. Not forced labor, but rebuilding. Some helped set up medical tents for others still recovering. Others built classrooms from scrap metal and plastic sheets. Children ran freely now. No guards, no screaming, only laughter. In one corner, Tarek taught a small group how to read Terran words. Another corner had a group of feathered aliens planning their journey home. And everywhere Logan looked, he saw life. Commander Reed approached him with a data pad. Earth's Council wants to give you a medal, she said. Logan raised an eyebrow. What for? For leading a revolt. For saving over 700 lives, for sending a signal that shouldn't have been possible. For not breaking. Logan looked out across the field. You want to know what really happened here? She tilted her head. Tell me. I didn't lead a revolt. I just stood back up. Over and over. And eventually they started standing too. Reed smiled. And you refused to bow? He nodded once. Because once you bow, it's harder to rise. Later that day, the former prisoners gathered in the yard. Logan was asked to speak. He walked slowly to the center. Everyone went silent. He looked at faces. Old, young, scarred, scared, but free. I came here in chains, he began, his voice rough but strong. I was told I'd be forgotten, buried, crushed. He paused. I believed that too, for a while. Until I realized something. He looked at Tarek, then Jezra, then the youngest alien child who once clapped during his whipping. We don't fight because we think we'll win. We fight because some things are too important to let die. He raised his head. Dignity, unity, hope. These things can't be beaten out of you unless you give them up. He pointed at the broken fence behind them. They took our freedom, but they couldn't take our choice to stand, and now, we never kneel again. The crowd rose to their feet. No one clapped. They simply stood, all of them, together. Later, Earth Command's broadcast went galaxy-wide. Footage of the labor camp's fall, the garden, and Logan's speech spread across systems. Planets that had stayed silent began to ask questions. Alien communities that lived in hiding began to speak up. Some even sent messages to Logan directly. One message read, "You were one man, but now you are a movement." Another simply said, "You gave us permission to believe again." 1 year later, a monument stood at the center of the Draxon Plains. It didn't show a man with weapons. It showed a human in chains, head high, fists unclenched, standing upright. At the base, the words were carved in 12 languages. He didn't fight with fists. He fought by refusing to fall. He taught us to rise. Final scene. Logan walked away from the monument, not to Earth, not to safety, but to another forgotten colony, another place full of silence, because wherever people were told to kneel, he would be there, to remind them they still had the power to stand.